Happy fifth Sunday after Easter. Still on our way to Pentecost and the birthday of the church. And I'm here with my magnolia blossom because it smells pretty nice. And um, we've been getting a few here little by little on my magnolia tree. So there that is. And I've a little earlier in the day now, so the sun's not about to go down, so that's good. That I'll have a little more time for that. And today's reading is in Acts chapter 8, and here it is, starting with verse 26. Acts 8, starting with verse 26. The Lord's angel said to Philip, "Go south along the desert road that leads from Jerusalem to Gaza." So Philip left. An important Ethiopian official happened to be going along that road in his chariot. He was the chief treasurer for Candace, queen of Ethiopia. The official had gone to Jerusalem to worship and now was on his way home. He was sitting in a chariot reading the book of the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit told Philip to catch up with the chariot. Philip ran up close and heard the man in the chariot reading aloud from the book of Isaiah, and Philip asked him, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And the official answered, "How can I understand unless someone helps me?" And then he invited Philip to come up and sit beside him. Now, there they were, all of them. And remember, this is later in the book of Acts. So they're beginning to get some heat back. Stephen's been stoned. They've been having to, they're having a hard time. And they're starting to disperse to, different locales, almost being forced to follow the Great Commission, to scatter and go out. Well, yes and no. They're being forced to scatter. They're not being forced by anyone except the Spirit to follow the Great Commission. But they are doing that. They're following Jesus' command to make disciples all over the place. And now, because they're being forced to leave, they're using that opportunity to spread out. But Philip's still in Jerusalem. But the angel comes to him and says, or, in some versions, the word of the Lord comes to him. And however it comes, there they are in Jerusalem, and the word comes and says, "Go to the Gaza road." And in most of them, and this one it says, "Go south along the desert road that leads from Jerusalem to Gaza," or on the road that leads from Jerusalem to Gaza in the desert. So don't just, don't just go to any old place. Go to the middle of the desert. Specifically, this is where you head out and go to the desert. That's where you need to be. And I've always kind of wanted to, to have been a fly on the wall right then and to hear what the conversation was all about. Because as far as places to minister, that's the worst place. Is go to the desert. Go where nobody is. Literally, nobody is. And everybody there doesn't want to be there. They're on their way somewhere else. That's pretty much what you expect in the desert road, is that this is not where you want to just hang out and say, "Oh yeah, what's going on?" It's desert for, and so everybody's on their way to another venue. So you've got to wonder what was in Philip's mind when he headed out. And as far as we know here, he doesn't have a chariot. He doesn't have any, um, like most people didn't back then. You had to be pretty high up to even have any means of transportation. They were expensive, and if you weren't just a traveling person, you didn't have even a donkey or a horse, because you've got to feed them all the time. You got to keep them up, and that was expensive and something you just didn't do on a regular basis. So, unless you hire one, it's, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to Jerusalem and I'm going to schlep on down 15 miles, 20 miles, down to the Gaza Road. Which, that's it's a bigger ask for us than it was back then, because, 20 miles you might go. You might be expected that any trip was going to take you quite a ways, just because anytime you're walking, wherever you're going is quite a ways. But even then, it sort of reminds me of when I first went to visit Barb's family in southern Michigan. They lived in a teeny little place called Ogden Center, and near Blissfield, which is near Adrian, which, unless you've been there, you haven't heard of any of those places. And of course it's farm, so, needs to be out where there's farmland. And they go out and they live out in the farmland there. And we were there for Thanksgiving and, visiting. And then everybody in Barb's generation, they have a rather large gathering every Thanksgiving. I mean, back before Beth was born, we went, and they had 80 people come to Thanksgiving. And then, our generation started having kids, and it was 85, and people just kept coming, and, last time it was like 90. And so at one point, all of Barb's cousins her age said, "Oh, we should go to a movie." And I'm thinking to myself, movie? Are there any movie houses near here? Where are we going to a movie? Unless they're, putting up a sheet and getting out the projector, nobody's seeing a movie. And I said, where would we go to see a movie? Oh, Toledo. 2 hours away to Toledo. And yet, to people that live out in the country, getting in the car and, highing over to Toledo was like, this is just what you do. You want to get somewhere, you get in the car and you're going to drive for a while. Because nothing's around the corner. The only thing around the corner is the next farm. And you might even own that patch of land, so you haven't even left your property. So in one sense, head on down to the Gaza Road is like, well, sounds like a walk, but okay, I'll head on down. Head on down to the Gaza Road in the middle of the desert, and while some of your compatriots are being persecuted, okay, I'll still head on down to the Gaza Road. And Philip complies, which implied that Philip had a relationship with God such that he was listening for what God wanted him to do and willing to comply with what God wanted him to do, even if it was inconvenient, possibly dangerous, and really, if you tried to analyze it, it made no sense. Go to the desert. Risk yourself. Walk 20 miles and go in the desert. All those things. Which, I must say, I would have to have absolute confirmation that that's what God wanted me to do if I was going to be doing that. some sort of written document, maybe. And Philip goes. And of course, here they say that he's an official. In the King James, if you're reading there, you'll no doubt have noticed that he's described as a eunuch who was an official for the queen, which meant that when he came to Jerusalem to worship, he was doing so as a specific outsider. That he would have been noticed being a dark-skinned African from Ethiopia, but also a eunuch. Almost the exact definition of an outsider in the middle of Jerusalem. And yet someone who was anxious to hear what the Lord had to say to him. Now you could tell he was well off because he had the chariot, which, said nobody has. And here he not only has a horse, he has a chariot. And it's a big chariot because he's sitting down reading, which means somebody else is driving. So he has the chauffeur-driven chariot. It's pretty sweet. It's not bad. And he's heading down. And Philip, obviously, it's not the high-speed chariot, which it's only in the movies that they're racing along at breakneck speed, because you don't have to spend much time around horses, which I have not. You fill a thimble with everything I know about horses, but I did read about them enough to know that you don't, if you have one and you're going any distance at all, you are not going full bore with this horse. Horse can run very fast, but not forever. Or you can ride the horse, or in this case, have the horse pull you, or a team of horses, and they'll go quite a ways, but you're not going very fast. Walking pace or a little faster. And this was a little faster because Philip had to sort of jog to catch up, because the Spirit said, there he is. That's who you're meeting. That's your rendezvous right there. And Philip sees him go by, and now Philip has to jog to catch up, which meant what? Philip was early. Philip got there, and not only had God said, go to the desert road on the way to Gaza, and by the way, it's in the desert, and Philip gets there, and just as you would expect for the desert, there's no one there. There's no one in the desert when he gets there, because it's the desert. So it's just Philip sitting on the desert road saying, okay, here I am. And it's only after, we don't know how long, but it becomes clear to Philip that chariot going by right there is who I need to talk to. And he hears the official reading aloud from the book of Isaiah. Now, it wasn't incredible that people read aloud. That normally happened, especially, well, as I've said, in Greek, that happened because when you were reading, it helped you to clarify the words as you went. And in Hebrew, that was especially true as well. And once again, generally speaking, that there was no punctuation and no vowels. So basically, sounding out the words helped give you the context as you went. And so the Ethiopian was reading from the book of Isaiah loud enough on the chariot in the desert for Philip to hear and say, hey, you know what you're reading. And, as you read along, you see that he comes to be a believer. right then and there. He's baptized right over there in that water. Pretty much the only water in the desert. And there it happens. That all of this unlikely sequence of events happens for this man to be able to become part of the kingdom. He works for the queen, but now he works for the king. he's become part of the family because Philip was responsive to this ridiculous request that made no sense, except it made all the sense in the world, because he was following the leading of the Spirit as he went, which is incredible that the whole sequence of events works, which is why the church grew there. There's Sassy, by the way. Now that Jeremy and I put up a fence here on either end, we can have Sassy run around back here, which he does so that he can find smelly, disgusting things to roll in. So that's, a plus. But that's why the church grew, because as the Spirit directed all of the members to live out the reality of being a member of the kingdom, of worshiping God as God's child, connected and directed by the Holy Spirit. They were able to do these ridiculous things, like go to the desert road exactly when somebody would need to be there. There's no other way that could happen except God directed. And in that way, as you and I become, or continue to be, sensitive to the Spirit, sensitive to the Spirit even to the ridiculous things, that we could respond to God's Spirit and be His people, and in that way continue to be the church, continue to be the Spirit-led church in the midst of difficult times. That's us. So let me commend to you Philip's story, and that you listen to the Spirit. And I'll pray for you that you do that, and you'll pray for me that I do that as well. And as we do that, as we respond in the same way that Philip did, then it's not about the high probability ahead of time, because there was nothing high probability about the Gaza Road from any calculus except from God's. And there it was 100%. But on anybody else's spreadsheet, it made no sense. But it did to God, and it did to Philip once he realized what was going on. And the rest is history. So it's pretty cool. So read through verse 46, the rest of chapter 8, and there it is. Thank you very much. I love you guys, and talk to you later. Bye.